At the end of the last episode, A Year of Transwise Transstrong, I concluded next time is yet to be decided, as at the time of recording I wasn't sure what this episode would be about. However, when reviewing the previous episodes for A Year of, I came across an idea I had to explore gender diversity in song, but was not sure if I would find a sufficient number of songs. However, a quick search online provided ample choice, with one group prominent, the Kinks, and therefore I decided to first take a deep dive into their songs, with a broader look at gender diversity in song to follow in the next episode. Welcome to Transwise Transstrong. I am Caroline O'Reilly. Episode 18. The Kinks celebrate gender diversity. On my website at www.twts.co.uk, the transcript page of this episode will have a link to a page with the lyrics of all the songs I will discuss. And I would really love to hear from you, which you can also do so on my website, totally anonymously if you wish, on the Have Your Say page. And I have an idea for a future episode, which would be a Q&A. But of course, I will need some Q's so I can provide the A's. If you are listening to this episode via my website on the transcription page, you might want to pause when a song title is mentioned and listen to it, as its green text is a hyperlink to Spotify, although one song is red text and this is a link to YouTube. And perhaps after hearing my thoughts, listen to the song again. The text in blue links to a web page, and turquoise text are the lyrics. But before I climb to the top diving board, who are the Kinks? The Kinks began as part of the British beat movement, and before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the Kinks' official website. The group was formed by two brothers, Ray and Dave Davies, in Muswell Hill, North London, although initially they were called the Ravens, playing a mixture of R&B and rock and roll, with their friend Peter Quaife on bass. Then, in 1964, a self-produced demo tape gained them a contract with Pi Records. However, before signing, Mick Avery replaced the original drummer Mickey Willett, and they changed their name, and the classic lineup of the Kinks was born. And it was with their third single, released in October 1964, You Really Got Me, a UK number one, that their career took off. Written by Ray, the group's lead singer and principal songwriter, and propelled by Dave's unique guitar sound, achieved by slashing the speaker cone of his guitar amp. Although not about gender diversity, it is well worth a listen, hence the Spotify link, as it has been cited as the inspiration for garage rock, punk, and heavy metal. And Blur's Damien Albarn and Noel and Liam Gallagher from Oasis acknowledged the band's influence, earning Ray Davies the title Godfather of Britpop. And so, 1 year on from You Really Got Me, from November 1965, we come to the first song, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, written by Ray. The song centers around a person who is pretty vain and always wants to be seen wearing the height of 60s fashion, and is sung by Davies with a degree of amusement at this modern day Beau Brummel, who in the early 19th century could also have been described as a dedicated follower of fashion. So let's start with the first verse, and His clothes are loud, but never square. Square was a slang term for someone who was conventional and perhaps old fashioned, and originated with American jazz musicians of the 1940s for people who preferred classical or traditional music and were not, to use another couple of 40s slang words, cool or hip. Then, in the chorus after the second verse, there is, and when he pulls his frilly nine and panties right up tight, which suggests cross dressing, as using panties indicates they were pulling on female underwear. And the next chorus reveals that the person being sung about was very vain. There's one thing that he loves, and that is flattery. With verse 3, there is everywhere the Carnabian army marches on, followed by each one a dedicated follower of fashion, indicates that the subject of the song is not the only follower of fashion, and Carnabetian is an allusion to Carnaby Street, London, which in the 60s was the centre of the latest fashions, with many independent fashion designers such as Mary Quant having an establishment there. Then, in the second chorus, he flits from shop to shop just like a butterfly. And interestingly, a butterfly has a strong association with the trans community, particularly trans women, because of its metamorphosis into a beautiful being. Although perhaps in this context it is more an allusion to a butterfly's flight. And then the next line, in matters of cloth, he is as fickle as can be, shows how fussy he was about his dress. And the song ends with an outro. He's a dedicated follower of fashion, sung twice. In leaving the 60s behind, the 70s would see three songs that explored gender diversity, and the most well known is Lola, released in June 1970. I've been on quite a journey with this song. When I first heard it in the early 70s, when I was around 7 or 8, I liked it. I think it would be fair to say my understanding of its lyrics was superficial. However, coming back to the song in my teens, it felt like a revelation with its exploration of gender diversity, as at the time I was questioning but not knowing why I felt drawn to a feminine identity, and I would grasp at anything that seemed to justify how I felt, such as the Bugs Bunny Merry Melody cartoon I saw in the 70s called What's Opera, Doc? That I mentioned in the introduction to I Am Not a Disorder, which was a parody of Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle. In the cartoon, Bugs was dressed en femme and was treated respectfully as if they were a female bunny, which, given it was made in 1957, was amazing. And I appreciate citing a cartoon bunny might seem somewhat surreal, but I hope it illustrates how few and far between were positive affirmations of who I now know I am, a trans woman. However, a year or so after I came out as a trans woman, in January 2019, I had become somewhat sensitive to anything I felt was gender critical, and it was around this time I saw a BBC programme that was about BBC banned records, one of which was Lola. My response then was negative because I was listening to just the surface of the song. But before revealing which lyrics provoked this response, why was it banned? And was the song inspired by a real event? Well, it seems it may have been inspired by an encounter by the band's manager, Robert Weiss, in Paris, and an aspect worth highlighting is throughout the song, told from the perspective of a narrator, Lola is never misgendered in respect of pronouns and is always referred to as she or her. So let's look deep into the groove of the song, which starts, I met her in a club down in Old Soho where you drink champagne and it tastes just like Coca-Cola. And that was the cause of the ban, or possibly more accurately, the threat of a ban, product placement, not the exploration of gender diversity. And not being able to distinguish between the taste of champagne, which can be sweet tasting, and Coca Cola might suggest that the narrator was not that sophisticated. So, to gain airplay on the BBC, Ray Davies had to fly back to London from the USA, where the Kinks were touring, to replace Coca Cola with Cherry Cola. I kid you not. Then the first verse continues. She walked up to me and she asked me to dance, which subverts the then traditional, old fashioned, if you will, expectation of female male roles, and was the first hint at the power dynamic between the two. Followed by, I asked her name, and in a dark brown voice she said, Lola. That suggests Lola's voice has a lower octave range than the somewhat unworldly narrator expects. Then in the first chorus there is, well, I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight, she nearly broke my spine, which illustrates the physical differences between the narrator and Lola, and also challenged the sexist stereotypical notion that only men are strong and powerful. Then continues, well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she walks like a woman but talks like a man, is a line why I had an issue with this song, as I am somewhat sensitive about my voice, which, although after voice feminizing speech therapy is more feminine, I am guilty of not practicing regularly. If you think of the voice like an instrument, practice makes perfect. Those two lines express the narrator's confusion that Lola's voice was lower than they expected a woman to sound, and was not a criticism of Lola. And whilst generally the female octal range is higher than a man's, it can be lower. In verse 2, there is, she picked me up and sat me on her knee, which continues the subversion of gender roles, with Lola taking the lead. In the second chorus, the narrator reveals they are not comfortable at expressing their emotions. Well, I'm not the world's most passionate guy, and is hesitant to fall in love with Lola. But when I looked in her eyes, well, I almost fell for Lola. And the bridge begins with the narrator initially being assertive. I pushed her away. I walked to the door. Then their resolve fails. I fell to the floor. I got down on my knees and concludes, then I looked at her and she looked at me. Hints at an emotional connection between the narrator and Lola, which is clarified in the final verse 3. Well, that's the way I want it to stay, and I always want it to be that way for my Lola, that they have fallen in love with Lola. Then, girls will be boys and boys will be girls, alludes to gender ambiguity and androgyny, and the fashion that men had long hair and some women had short, a fashion pioneered by Twiggy. And the verse concludes by further expressing the narrator's confusion at the diversity of gender expression. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world, except for Lola. But they have no doubts about Lola. In the last chorus, they reveal they have no experience with women, and I'd never ever kissed a woman before. And then with, but Lola smiled and took me by the hand and said, dear boy, I'm going to make you a man. Lola takes the lead and initiates making love to them. Finally, with, well, I am not the most masculine man, the narrator is making a thoughtful, witty comment about their physicality, and with, "But I know what I am, and I'm glad I'm a man," they reveal that they are happy with their physicality, and end with, "And so is Lola," before the outro and multiple repeats of "La la 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 Lola." Next, we come to On the Outside, released in February 1977, where we learn in the first verse that the person the song is about is somewhat agoraphobic. You stay at home, and this is reinforced by the third line, "You never go anywhere, you say you've nothing to wear." And the second half of that line, "You say you've nothing to wear," is a phrase one might use about female dress and is a hint about the person. Then in verse 2, the narrator lets the person know that they are aware that they are suppressing something about themselves. There's something hidden in you, and you keep it out of view. And then reassures with, "You shouldn't feel any guilt or have any doubts." And the verse ends with the narrator telling the person that they must embrace their authentic self. You've got to let yourself out whilst there's something left of you. And with the first chorus, "Hey Baby Blue," suggests the person the narrator is talking to is sad, and continues that they should embrace their true self. Don't hide your troubles inside, and that they want to meet this person. "I'd sure like to know you," and ends with an invitation. And there's so much to show you on the outside. Then the second chorus starts with further reassurance. "Somehow I know that we are gonna get by," and with, "Stop acting like a lady, come out and cry like a baby on the outside." They ask them to stop repressing their emotions, and we learn that the person the song is about is a trans woman. And the last line of the chorus is further reassurance. "I know we're going to be all right." Verse 3 further reassures and repeats the line, "So stop acting like a lady." Verse 4 reveals that the person the song is about believes their feeling that they are a woman is wrong. "You think you're a freak," which is possibly how some trans people initially feel, and that they would not be accepted as a woman. And you're afraid to compete. And with "You're a Closet Queen," we learn that they are feminine at home but not outside, and that they feel guilty. "You think it's obscene to let people see what's deep inside of you." But of course, this guilt has been fostered on them by society. With verse 5, the narrator tells them that they know how they are feeling, and that they know there have always been trans people, and not to feel guilty. "I know what you're going through, but what you are is nothing new, so don't feel ashamed." And end with a command to roll up the blinds and let the sun come shining through. Then the two choruses are repeated, except for the third line of the first chorus, which is now "You should be glad in the gay," which is used in its old sense of joyful. And the fourth line now tells the person that no one cares if they're open about being transgender. Nobody cares anyway on the outside. Finally, the song ends with a repeat of the first two lines of the second chorus and concludes, on the outside, all night." Before you listen to this penultimate song, you should be aware that it contains two derogatory homophobic words, and if you do not want to listen to it when I discuss the song, I will not use those words, but say F word and P word. And so to May 1978 and the release of Out of the Wardrobe. I was in two minds about including this song for the reasons just mentioned, but its positivity about accepting gender nonconformity just won out. Just. Those two words were used to say that the person the song is about is not a gay man, but someone who cross dresses. But even in 1978, I'm sure some people would have found them offensive, let alone today. And even in the context of the song, cannot see a justification for using them. From the first verse, we learn the song is about a person called Dick. And the first line, has anyone seen a chick called Dick, raises a question about their gender identity, but proceeds to describe them in masculine terms with phrases such as real burly and his arms are all brown and hairy. But with he married Betty Lou back in 65 when you had to be butch to survive, and but lately he's been looking at his wife with mixed emotions, suggest they felt that they had to adopt a gender expression which was not reflective of their true gender identity. Then with verse 2, you see he's not a commonplace closet queen. We learn that the person the song is about is more complex. However, closet queen would be a derogatory term if about a gay man who is not open about their sexuality, but here it alludes to cross-dressing, which is confirmed by the last two lines of the verse, because when he puts on that dress and he looks like a princess, and the preceding line too suggests that he shouldn't be hidden, he should be seen. But as verse 3 reveals, their wife was not aware of their true gender identity. Well, the day he came out of the wardrobe, and Betty Lou got quite a surprise. And continues by describing her indecision. She didn't know whether she should get angry or not bat an eye. Should she go or should she stay, or should she try to get a trial separation? Then, with verse 4, we come to the first derogatory word. You see, he's not an F word, as you might suppose, which was to say that they were not gay. The verse continues to reveal that Dick feels constrained by male dress, and how liberated they feel when dressed on them. 'Cause when he puts on that dress, he feels like a princess. With verse 5, we come to the second derogatory word, which rhymed with a word in the second line. He's not a dandy, he's only living out a fantasy. He's not a P word, he's only being what he wants to be, which expresses that his gender expression is not performative but reflective of who they are, albeit offensively. And the verse ends with them expressing that they are happy, that they are no longer living a lie in terms of their gender identity, with the last line containing the title of the song as a metaphor for coming out. He's out of the wardrobe and now he's got no regrets. And in verse 6, Betty Lou is at first unsure, but then embraces the change and is very happy. And with line 5, she says that it helps their relationship, and the last line reveals that their friends are beginning to accept the change, and their friends are finally coming round to their way of thinking. With verse 7, we learn that there is now a reversal of stereotypical gender roles by the lines she wears the trousers and smokes the pipe, and he washes up and she helps him wipe. And the song ends with verse 8, where Dick expresses that they are content and happy being true to themselves, and that everyone knows. And as the last line puts it, he's out of the wardrobe and now he's got no regrets. A new decade and a sequel to Lola, Destroyer, which was released in August 1981 and whose main riff comes from another Kinks song, All Day and All of the Night. From the first verse, we learn that the narrator is paranoid, feeling guilty, feeling scared, hidden cameras everywhere, and that they are trying to control their anxiety. Then in verse 2, they express self doubt by alluding to being old fashioned by I'm not really as cool as I'd like to be. Then continues, 'cause there's a red under my bed, which, given verse one's expression of paranoia, is possibly a reference to secobarbital, a barbiturate whose capsule colour is red-orange, and misuse recreationally can cause paranoia. This feeling of paranoia is reinforced by, and there's a little yellow man in my head, and there's a true blue inside of me. And the verse ends with them expressing how inhibited they feel. That keeps stopping me touching you, wanting you, loving you. Then the chorus leaves little doubt about their mental health, with two refrains of Paranoia the Destroyer. With verse 3, the narrator relates how Lola tells them that their behavior is spiraling out of control. One day you're gonna self-destruct. You're up, you're down. I can't work you out. And he is ruining their relationship by, you've got a good thing going, then you blow yourself out. Then this time the chorus is from Lola's point of view, with again a double refrain. Silly boy, you self-destroyer. And with verse 4, Lola takes up the narrative, chiding the narrator, but also reassuring them with, Silly boy, you've got so much to live for, and tells them they could lose it all. You're so insecure, you self-destroyer. And with the chorus, the narrative, I think, reverts back to the narrator, double repeating again, Paranoia the Destroyer, interleaved between the first lines, and it goes like this, here it goes, and here it goes again. Then in verse 5, the narrator asks for medical help, and perhaps verse two's yellow man in my head and true blue inside me was alluding to them believing something was inside them. There's a tiny device inside of me. I'm a self-destructing man. In verse 6, the narrator continues to voice their paranoia. The doctor reassures them. He said, you're not going crazy, you're just a bit sad, 'cause there's a man in you, gnawing you, tearing you into two, suggesting that the narrator has an inner voice fueling his paranoia. And again in the chorus, Lola tells the narrator that their paranoia is destroying them. Then, in the final verse, the narrator finally succumbs to their paranoia with the last line, light the fuse and start the eruption. Yeah! And the song ends with the last chorus describing their full-blown paranoia. This episode was written and presented by me, Caroline O'Reilly. Thank you for listening. Next time, celebrating gender diversity in song, Part 1.